The Board of Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District is called to order at 6:32 p.m. This is the regular monthly board meeting being held on February the 15th, 2022. We have a quorum with all members present with the exception of Mrs. Bronzell. Please join me in a moment of silence to observe as you feel appropriate. Okay, please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
honor the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right. Dr. Nivens, are there any recognitions or awards this evening?
Yes, ma'am, Madam President, we do have some recognitions and awards. I'll turn over to Ms. Sayako Hamilton.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, Dr. Nivens, and community. Would Gloria Asabi and ag teacher Mr. Zach Nowalk please come to the front? Gloria Asabi has competed in FFA creed speaking since her freshman year, and she's always placed in the upper level at her contest, but never high enough to advance to state. But this year, as a senior at B.F. Terry High School, she advanced to the state contest where she placed 6th overall. In this contest, she competed and beat more than 3,000 other FFA creed speakers from across the state of Texas. This was her final chance to compete in FFA creed speaking, as this is her senior year of high school. After Gloria graduates, she plans to attend Texas A&M University in the fall to pursue a degree in public health and nursing. She attributes much of her success to the discipline, responsibility, and work ethic that she developed through her time in FFA at Terry High School. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in congratulating and recognizing Ms. Gloria Asabi. Gloria, you may shake the hand. Gloria is joined this evening by her agriculture teacher, Mr. Zach Nowalk. Okay, everybody squeezing tight. There you go. Sure. Dr. Nivens, this concludes our recognitions for this evening.
Are there any introductions?
Yes, ma'am, Madam President, we have an introduction. I'll turn over to Mr. Bates.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Nivens. Good evening, Board of Trustees. In the January board meeting, the Board of Trustees approved the hiring of one of our new assistant principals at Wertheimer Middle School, and tonight we would like to introduce her to the Board of Trustees and to the LCISD family. If she'll approach, Ms. Tori Castaneda is a May 2003 graduate of Vanderbilt University with a bachelor's degree in political science. She received a master's degree in 2020 in educational leadership from the University of Houston, Victoria. Ms. Castaneda has 13 years of experience of teaching and is currently serving as an academic facilitator, was currently serving as an academic facilitator. So I present to you all Ms. Tori Castaneda. Feel free to shake hands.
Is he going to say something?
Would you like to take the opportunity to introduce your family, please?
I would like to introduce my father and my sister that are here with me. And I would like to say hello to my husband and my son that's sick at home that are watching online on YouTube. So,
Yes, there we go.
thank you all.
Thank you.
That concludes all introductions for this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt, would you please state the special recognition, please?
Yes, Madam President. Jamie Warren Roberts was a native Texan born in Waco on September 19, 1934. He graduated from Waco High School, served in the United States Navy, and then graduated from Baylor University. With his degree in education, he began teaching in Waco ISD and coached several sports. He also spent his summers as a youth director at the Waco State Children's Home. He spent 24 years working with school districts throughout Texas and neighboring states as a school textbook manufacturer representative. Then, in 1985, Jamie founded J.W. Roberts Company, a manufacturer's representative agency for industrial supplies. Upon moving to the Fulshire area in 1969, Jamie immediately got involved in solving community issues. When he realized the city lacked water and sewage funding, he worked to incorporate the city, and when he succeeded, Fulshire became an incorporated city eligible for water and sewer funding. Jamie Roberts also established his own solution to Fulshire's lack of emergency medical services and got the training necessary to serve as a volunteer EMS responder. In 1977, he was elected as the first mayor of Fulshire and later in life went on to serve again as mayor of the city in 2006. In 1980, Jamie was elected to the Lamar CISD school board. He served a total of 12 years on the board, with 9 of them as president. Additionally, Jamie Roberts was also a founding member of the Lamar Educational Awards Foundation, LEAF, and also served on the Fort Bend County Library Board, helping to secure funds for the completion of the George Memorial Library in Richmond and the outlying library branches. Jamie Roberts was deeply honored when he was chosen by Lamar CISD to have a school named after him. When James Warren Roberts Middle School opened in August 2019, he was there to open car doors for students, welcoming them to school. It was no doubt one of the proudest days of his life. He loved our community, and our community loved him right back. Jamie was also proud to share his passion for Lamar CISD with 2 of his daughters-in-law. Like her father-in-law, Melissa Roberts also served on the Board of Trustees from 2015 to 2019, and Dr. Jennifer Roberts currently serves as the Director of Student Services for the district. Jamie Roberts passed away on January 7th, 2022, and is survived by his loving wife, Martha, brother, sons, daughters-in-law, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, extended family, and many friends.
So would those in attendance from the family and friends please stand and be recognized this evening? We will now take a 10-minute recess to visit with the Roberts family and those in attendance tonight, honoring the memory of Jamie Roberts. Please join us in room 112C. The time is now 6:42 p.m. We are now back in open session. It is 7:28 PM. We have a quorum with all members present except for Ms. Brunzell. Dr. Nivens will now introduce administration to discuss the open records request process.
All right, thank you, Madam President. I'll turn over to Ms. Sonia Cole Hamilton to discuss the open records process.
Good evening, everyone. So the Public Information Act generally requires a governmental body, in that case, that would be a school district, to release information in response to a request. The PIA is a way that the public can request information from a governmental entity. In our instance, it would be us as the district. Now, as a district, we can determine whether or not we're going to release some information if we deem it's confidential. And I want to walk us through some of the highlights of the PIA, the timeline, and some updates here in Lamar CISD. So typically, school district, we must promptly produce the information. Request is usually here that we've got 10 days to do it. 10 days mean that we have to provide a response. So promptly really means that we can take a reasonable amount of time to produce the information, but we cannot delay the process. The amount of time that's reasonable to release information could vary in each case. So our 10-day window allows us an opportunity to determine whether or not we need to obtain clarification regarding the open records request, or whether or not we need to request a fee. So some public information is considered confidential by statute, and it's mandatory for governmental entities to withhold such confidential information. We can also withhold information that's not confidential by nature, and there's a process for that I want to talk through. But as far as confidential information, on the screen is a list of the common types of information that is deemed confidential by law. So driver's license number, credit card numbers, things of that nature, these are determined as confidential by law. However, there are some items that a governmental entity can deem discretionary. And so attorney-client privilege communication, drafts of policy-making documents, information related to pending litigation, audit working papers, or of course, items for competitive bid. Now, if we want to withhold any information, we must obtain a ruling from the OAG. That's the Office of the Attorney General. And so last school year, as a district, I believe we sent 5 items for review to the OAG. This year, so far, we've submitted 2 items to review for the Office of Attorney General. Now, after speaking with our attorney, I can just let you know, like for the 2 pending ones that we have right now, some of the reasons why we submitted it to the OAG is because we deemed there were attorney-client communications, deliberative process communications, FERPA information that we deemed should not be released, common law privacy, information related to medical, Zoom dial-in codes, actually, we think that could be deemed confidential, as well as evaluations and evaluative information. So I want to talk about costs right now. So there's no charge for obtaining fewer than 50 pages of information or even for inspecting information unless there's a labor involved in terms of redacting some of the confidential information that I mentioned earlier. Now, we may charge for any labor related to redacting. We also can charge to recoup any costs out of pocket. For instance, if they request information on a CD or a flash drive, things of that nature. If the documents that they are requesting exceed 50 pages, then we do have a guide that we use to guide the cost expenses. The cost rules are available on the OAG website, and it's actually a cost calculator that we utilize to determine how much we would charge a potential requester for such a request. And if costs seem unreasonable, we always offer less expensive ways to obtain and view information. I want to share with you a couple of open records requests we received this year, just the sample language that we send to requesters, so you have an idea of the types of things that we offer in the event that they deem a cost is too exorbitant. So for instance, this request is looking at as an actual request. This is our reply in our cost estimate letter. The cost of this request is going to be $3.89. However, $2.89 of that is postage. So in the text, we say if you choose to pick up the information, you only need to pay $1. That's an example of us saying if you don't want to pay for printed copies, if you don't want to pay for postage, you can come pick it up in person. This is an example of a more expensive charge. This request came out to about 1,500 pages of information at 10 cents a page. So the total cost is $329.80. But if you look at the paragraph under the chart, For this requester, we said a less expensive way for you to attain this information is for you to narrow the scope of your request. Sometimes when people ask for requests, they don't provide a date range, or they don't provide certain topics, and so we pull everything to look at something that could be responsive to their request, and one way to lower their cost is to narrow the scope. So for instance, they can say, I want information only related to this item for these particular months, and that could lower the cost. So requesting public information is actually not complex. You gotta be as specific as possible in your request. It is not uncommon for us to reach back out to the requester to ask them to clarify the response. The information must be in writing. What I have seen frequently since I've been here is that sometimes requesters are asking for information that's not in existence, and under the PIA, we are only responsible to provide information that is already in existence. We're not required to answer questions, we're not required to do legal research, nor create new information in response to the requests. And since I've been here, I have seen a number of requests come through that fall more into the latter categories. And then lastly, just want to share that, we receive information a number of ways, and this is one thing that we are updating this year. So last fall, the Communications Department piloted an electronic version of our open records request. Because right now, poor Barbara has a separate Excel spreadsheet. She tries to keep it all in, and documents don't talk to one another. Utilizing an electronic file allows us to create a spreadsheet, but more importantly, to create an archive of the requests that we're getting. So we piloted this fall a little bit. We're going to roll it out full-fledged this spring. The other thing that I've seen since being here is that the Communications Department also receives frequent records for employee records, requests for employee records, and requests for student records. And so we see an opportunity to clarify for our public what an open records request is, what our process is. So I appreciate sharing this information with you all tonight to give you an overview of what the process is. Everything I've shared this evening, we're going to be updating our landing page on the Open Records Request website as we launch the electronic link where requesters can utilize to submit a request. We still accept requests via paper or mail or the traditional means, but due to the nature of what we've been receiving lately, we are going to move to a more electronic system. I think that's all the information I have with you this evening. I am prepared to entertain any questions you have about our process here in Lamar CISD. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to go ahead and do the board member reports before we open up to public comments. Do we have any board member reports?
I do, Madam President.
Mr. Hunt, please start us off.
So there's a lot of good stuff happening in the district. There's regional championships and division championships and spelling bees and all types of good stuff. But I wanted to share just 3 moments, 3 events that made me really proud this month to be a board member and to be a taxpayer and to be a community member and to be a parent in LCISD. So the first one, each of the board members played a part in, but it was, what kicked it off was the character counts video that Mr. Lambert and Dr. Nivens did. And I loved it because it showed that we're more than just teaching facts and figures and math and reading, that we take teaching our kids values seriously, and we understand the importance that our schools have in making sure that our kids have good values. And there's one thing, Mr. Lambert, that you said, and it was that we should always give others the benefit of the doubt. And I feel like in today's climate and in today's world, that sometimes is a hard thing to do. When you've got bills coming in and you've got somebody cutting you off in the car line and you've got a bus driver that's late, it's hard to give folks the benefit of the doubt. And when you said that, it made me think of one word that's been personally very meaningful for me, and that's the word grace. Essentially what you were saying was to give other people grace. And for me, I know that's this huge word, and it's all-encompassing, and it's undeserved, and I'm still blessed with it, and I'm thankful for that. And so every day I try to live that. And that video that y'all did really showed that that's a value that Lamar CISD has as well. And so when I get cut off in the car line and maybe the person I don't feel like is deserving of grace, I have to catch myself and say, no, they do. But I think it's also a good indication that it's an opportunity for all of us to teach it and that our kids are watching. And when, when they see the person cut us off in line, they see our reaction to that. And when something happens, a bill is late, they see our reaction to that. Or when they see something online, they say, are they going to give them the benefit of the doubt? They see what our reaction is. So I see us teaching that in our schools every day. And I see it when I'm dropping my kids off and when I'm picking them up. And so the second event that I saw this month was Kindness Week at my kids' school. And so as I was walking them into school, the sidewalk was just completely filled up with like really colorful chalk, positive affirmations. Some kids in some schools, I think it was Roberts Middle School, were certified kindness students. And Roberts Middle School is a certified kindness campus. And on my kids' campus, they had a Random Acts of Kindness Award. And I saw a friend of mine post on social media, and it rang true for me, is my kid can miss out on all of the academic awards, but if they're getting the kindness award, I know that we're doing something right. And so the fact that our district is putting value on those things makes me really proud. So the last event was last week, and it was the dedication of Fletch and Morgan Junior Elementary School. And Miss Rita Morgan Miller stood up and just spoke beautifully about her father, and just painted a beautiful picture of the kind of man he was, and particularly talked about how in the middle of the night, if somebody's cows got out, even if they weren't his, he would get up and he would go and help them out. And one thing stuck with me, and it was that he always took advantage of an opportunity to love thy neighbor. And we have new school naming coming up. Next month, there's going to be some comments on it, and then in April is when I anticipate the vote will be. And just made me feel proud that we have a school where that was his values. And so I hope we continue to do that, and we're building those values into our kids. And those things stood out among all the other amazing things. Our teachers are doing awesome work. Our parents are doing awesome work. Our students are doing awesome work. Our bus drivers, our staff. Made me grateful to be part of this district.
Thank you, Alex. Mr. Lambert.
Yes. If I get emotional, it's because I'm a passionate person and I love our district and already. Went to two events this past month. The celebration for Success Pepper Rally at Wright Junior High, and then the Valentine's Dance at Jane Long. Both those events, I saw something that we've been lacking for the past 3 years, and that was joy. These kids were joyful. These kids were happy. These teachers were joyful. It was deeper than just happy. They felt safe. They felt loved. They felt cared for. They felt valued. They felt like they mattered. Woo! And this past 3 years have been hell for a lot of people. We have lost some of our family due to the unintentional consequences of what we walked through. But for a glimpse, for that couple of hours out of the day, those students had joy. I think in everything we are doing as a district, we miss out on some of that joy. We miss out looking for that kind of joy. And I don't need that. I'm a man. Yes, I do. But we miss out on that joy, miss out looking out for that joy, miss out spotting that joy, miss out highlighting that joy. So for those two events at those two schools that I got to just be a part of for just a little bit, and there's video of me on social media doing a worm in front of a bunch of 8th graders, I don't care because those students, they were laughing, they were having fun, they didn't care, but with everything we're going on, what you said, we've got to look for that joy, and we've got to aim for that joy, not just happy. We want joy. So that's it.
Thank you so much. Ms. Danziger raised her hand first.
I don't know how I can follow these two.
Good luck.
I know. I'll go first. I was so happy to be able to be in the audience for the Fulshear High School production of Thoroughly Modern Millie and Foster's production of The Wiz. Those kids were so happy to be able to get up on stage and do the productions like they did not get to do. I mean, they tried, but it was very hard last year. And we have such talented students, and what our teachers are pulling from these students, not just the actors and actresses, but the band and the orchestra and the sets. It just blows me away what our students are doing and what we're providing for our students, because there's all different avenues that our kids can take. Not everybody's into sports, not everybody's into choir, but if they are, we've got it. If they're not into this, we have something for them. And it just does my heart good to see the arts really coming alive. And of course, our rodeo art, and I know the family of Mia Huckman, and they are just thrilled. She is such a talented, I can't wait to go to see her painting on display at the Livestock Show and Rodeo. I did participate week before last on the night that it was freezing, and thank you, Jim Rice, for making the meeting by Zoom, in the District 4 grassroots meeting through TASB, where we did come up with the 5 areas that we want to bring to the next convention that will send to legislation, what we would like for them to look at for education and for our teachers and students. And then last Friday was a very busy day. We started out with Dr. Nivens and I visiting some of the schools in the Silver Track, which I hadn't had a chance to do. And my goodness, we build gorgeous schools. And the kids, you could see the pride in their faces as they went through the hallways. And I'm just so proud of us that we can provide good teachers, good schools for their education. And like you said, Mr. Hunt, the dedication of Morgan Elementary. I knew his daughter. I've met her more than once over the years, and I was told that she went out on almost every week to go watch that school being built. And the people that came out for her family, you knew how much her father had touched the community. So, like I say, we might be 40,000 kids, but we still have kind of that small town feel, and I love it because we still are celebrating the people of our community.
Thank you, Ms. Danziger. Mr. Ray.
I've been to several schools, but the one thing that stands out to me since our last meeting was on January 21st. It was a Friday night. I slipped into the Terry High School women's gym, and I witnessed our lady basketball team all standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. And why that's significant is because the opposing team was all on their knees. And I can't tell you how proud I was of our Lady Rangers. And one of them was singing the national anthem. Our coaches were standing at attention with their hands over their heart. And I was just aghast that the other team was on their knees. And I kept looking at the flag and at the team kneeling and then at ours. And I almost snapped a picture, but I didn't. But I know the board members of where the other school is from, and I was kind of ribbing them afterwards, like, hey, you just want to let you know, who's got the more patriotic team. But anyway, it really touched me. It was a Friday night. I was looking around, and I was really proud of the varsity Lady Rangers. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Welch. All right, a couple things. So before the dedication, it was beautiful. Mr. Welch and Mr. Lambert and Dr. Nivens and I got to go by and stop by Fulshear High School for a tour, and so it was good to be back on that campus. I went to the district, I guess it was, not regionals, districts before regionals, is that right? Yes. Swim meet at the natatorium, and it was wonderful to be there. But something that also stood out to me was we have a lot of talent in the district, but a gentleman came up to me and he was telling me that Mr. Fike, who is an athletic trainer here in the district, how he went out of his way, I think it was last year or it was a little bit in the past, but he just said he was outstanding, and I know those gentlemen don't always get recognized, so I just wanted to recognize that. It was an unsolicited compliment, and so I think it was really great. I got to participate in a parade for Principal Patterson over at George Ranch High School, and she is the secondary principal of the year, and so she's always doing parades for other people, and so it was really good to get to celebrate her. And I think it's always weird to be on the receiving end, and so it was neat, and she was very humbled by it, so it was a beautiful celebration. And finally, Dr. Nivens and I were asked to present at the Rosenberg Women's Club, and so we typically meet with parents of kids in the school, and so this was a different opportunity, and so it was nice to be able to speak to other members in the community and share about all the growth. I think they were kind of blown away by some of the growth that we're experiencing, and so it was a good moment. And that is all for me. Dr. Nivens, do you want to do your report now?
Yes, ma'am, I can do it now.
Okay.
It's really brief. So if you look at my social media, you see I'm always out and about on campuses, and that's for multiple reasons. One is, as Trustee Hunt said, and also as Trustee Lambert said, it's all about joy, and there's nothing better than sitting in the classroom and watching our young people be successful. And if you think you're having a bad day, just go on the campus and hang out with our young people, and they will brighten your day really quickly, and because they're very honest. One kid called me a truck. He said, "Man, you're as big as a truck." I said, "Oh, okay. I appreciate that, son." Right. I was in the way, right? I was in the way. And then watching the love of our teachers, our teachers and their love for students is very inspiring. But I will tell you the most important thing to me was tonight I was late to the master plan principals meeting because this board allowed me to go be a dad. So it was special. Tonight was my son's senior night. No. Tonight was his senior night, and I uprooted him his senior year to come here. And he's a great kid, not one complaint. And so his senior night tonight, and the board allowed me to miss. And so I was there to be daddy for a minute. And so that's very special.
Can I jump in there 1 second? So when we went to Fulshire High School, we made sure to find where his son was and what class he was in. And we had to go up and down the stairs. He was in a lab, ended up being, and so we just walked up and stood behind him, and as he turned around, you could see him wanting to just crawl right inside of his. It was a good moment. But anyways, I had to share that. So I'm glad you got to celebrate with him tonight. All right, so now we are on public comments. Ms. Johnson, are there any public comments?
Yes, Madam President. If you wish to address the board, you must fill out a card and submit it before the presiding officer calls the meeting to order. While speakers generally have 5 minutes to address the board, the presiding officer may establish an overall time limit for public comment and adjust the time allotted to each speaker when necessary to accommodate a large number of speakers. However, no speaker shall be given less than 1 minute. All of this is in compliance with HB 2840. Each speaker tonight will have 5 minutes. While the board values hearing from members of the public, trustees may not respond to comments as they are prohibited by law from discussing or deciding any subject that is not on the board's publicly noticed agenda. Speakers having complaints against individual district employees or trustees may only address the board after filing a complaint form and in the manner provided for in Board Policy DGBA Employee Complaints, F&G student and parent complaints, GF, public complaints. The presiding officer or designee shall determine whether a speaker has filed a complaint according to policy. Any speakers who complain of individual district employees or trustees during public comment will be directed by the presiding officer to stop addressing the board and will refer the speaker to the appropriate complaint policy. Please state your name when you come forward. Our first speaker tonight is Heather Statzer.
Hello, my name is Heather Statzer, and I'm coming to speak to you tonight as a parent of Summer Lakes community. My daughter attends Arredondo Elementary. She is a third grader. I have a few concerns as far as our boundary committee meeting and where the division will be as far as rezoning. And I would like to present those to you just to be heard and thought. Our first one is the traffic pattern that will be on Benton Road, as well as the traffic pattern of our train. I was running late. I'm also a substitute for Lamar CISD, so I was running a little bit behind, and I was able to see that the train came exactly at 7:08. If our school starts at 7:30, then we're going to be stuck behind that train. It is at this point, it is a two-lane road coming out. I don't know the exact name, but it is a two-lane road to get to Williams, which would be the easiest way access there. To my knowledge, there's not been a bond approval for changing the pickup line or adding anything additional. And so I see that as a concern as well for Williams Elementary. It is a small parking lot. I have seen the pickup line with the minimal amount of kids that they have there now. Adding that, I just can imagine will be a little bit of a headache for parents as well. And right now this conversation has been trending on our neighborhood app, and just being allowed to be heard as a parent is important to me. And so speaking on behalf of our neighborhood, I know that there are other people that are speaking as well on behalf of our neighborhood. And lastly, this is coming from a mom standpoint. My daughter, I have fought really, really hard to get her the accommodations that she needs for the 504. We are going into a STAR testing year. She will be in third grade. She is just now getting the accommodations that she needs. I have seen my child go from failing to now making all A's and B's. Why? Because the teachers there know her. The teachers fight for her. Like you have spoke many times tonight, there is a joy. Lamar CISD is a family atmosphere. And we feel that way as attendees of Arredondo Elementary. That is not to say that we couldn't feel that way at Williams as well. I've heard wonderful things. But from a mother standpoint, this is me fighting for my child in front of you. And I appreciate the opportunity to be heard from that. And I just want to say that I love LCISD. My husband and I have spoke many times about potentially moving, and it has always come down to, but what school district are we going to be in? And it's not an option for us to move out of LCISD. So we appreciate you guys, and thank you for the opportunity for allowing us to be heard and for sharing our concerns as well as our praises of y'all.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Rebecca Clark.
My name's Rebecca Clark, and I appreciate that presentation that y'all put together for me, since y'all knew I would be coming to talk about Public Information Act, so thank you for putting that all together. I also want to say that I support you guys and the teachers and the staff. I have gone to bat, not against my children, but running interference for teachers when it came to my children and poor behavior or things like that. So I support all that, and I appreciate you guys. And I tell you that every time. What I don't appreciate is double-mindedness in leadership. In fact, it needs to be held to account. And so I want to talk about your character counts video, which was great. Said things like, we have the character counts traits of trustworthiness, responsibility, and respect. We must remember to not only hold our students to account, but we have to hold ourselves to account as well. These are all quotes from the video. I'm sure y'all know that because y'all were participants in it. Much more than words on a page or words in a video, we look to you to lead by example. It starts with us. How do we live this out? The example you set counts. So I'm assuming that y'all actually believe these things, or else you probably wouldn't have said them. So that leads me to what I have an issue with when I have filed a public information request, because there are things I was concerned about and I wanted to get the information that I believe exists. And instead of being forthright and transparent, as you would think when there's nothing to hide, people would be, I was given the runaround. The 10 full days with which the district had to respond, they took, and then responded to me with one question of asking me to clarify. Well, I didn't need to clarify. It was very clear what I asked. So I pretty much just said the same thing immediately back. And then another 10-day clock started, and the 10 business days, they waited till the final 10 days to then tell me they were punting it to the Attorney General's office. So, okay, interesting. So now the 30-day clock starts, and every day of that was taken because the Attorney General's office has to do due diligence and go through all the documents and decide whether or not the reason for the refusal to provide the public documents to a taxpayer, mother of 4, in the school district is legitimate. So after the 30 days, I waited. I ran some traps and made sure that it was getting pushed through. Got the response that indeed there are just under 8,000 documents that I requested, most of which were to be turned over or to be released to me, because the attorney-client privilege doesn't really work when you're an attorney, and that doesn't work. So anyway, those were supposed to be released to me, but they were going to charge over about $1,100 out of my taxpayer dollars, our taxpayer dollars. We paid an attorney's office to give me the runaround for information that should just been willingly given. I'm not asking for personal details. I'm not asking for anything unreasonable. And instead, we're wasting money paying attorneys to give me the runaround. Okay, I know it costs a lot. So my next request will be for the bill that us taxpayers footed to pay for the attorney fees to give me the runaround. You know, if there's nothing there when I get it, I'm not going to pay that much money to do it. I refuse to do that. I'll figure out a way to get it without it. But if there's nothing, I'll be the first to say so. That's fine. That's what I want. I hope there's nothing there. But I find it hard to believe that it's fought so hard in hopes that I would probably give up and go away, only to be nothing. I mean, that's what I hope. I hope that's what it is. But it sure doesn't look good. And certainly, leaders are to be held to a higher standard than our children. Okay, you're in a position of leadership. So not only should you exemplify the character qualities that we tout, you should do it to the T. And yes, there is grace. People aren't perfect. I got plenty of grace. But it's a matter of principle, and when people aren't holding to their self the same standards they expect others to, then it needs to be brought up. So I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michelle Roth.
I'm going to try to keep this short and sweet, as I'm sure she's going to start vocalizing her thoughts on things too. But I am here as well in regards to the Summer Lakes community being rezoned from Arredondo to Williams. I know, baby. When I found out what was going on, I was personally upset, yes, because I've got 2 children who are currently in school, one who has been going there for speech since he was 3. They are both involved in the GT program as well as some other things going on at the school. I do have 2 other children, this is number 4, who also will be attending school. But what really upset me was the fact that I walked door to door this weekend to 200 of the neighbors in the subdivision. And out of those 200 neighbors, I spoke with directly 55 of them. And out of those 55, almost none of them, I think there was like 4, who actually knew that this rezoning was happening. Majority of the neighbors are very upset over the fact that this is happening, even the ones that don't have children in the school. We have concerns with regards, of course, like she said, about Benton Road traffic and the railroad with the train. I live in the back section, so I know the train goes by very frequently because it goes by my house. And it will pose to be a problem because I've been stuck there at pickup time before in the afternoons, and it's taken me over 30 minutes just to cross over the railroad tracks to get home to my children, let alone waiting there in line to go pick them up, or the school bus is having to wait for the trains. I apologize. She's been patient this whole time. But on top of that, we're also looking at, I'm also a local realtor here in the area, and with moving from a newer elementary school to an older elementary school, we are also looking at posing the problem of property damage, or not property damage, I'm sorry, property value is going down. I'm not sleep deprived or anything. But property values declining, just for the fact that, you know, we're gonna be going to an older elementary school. Yes, I understand that the state testing scores and everything like that are a little bit higher at Williams Elementary than Arredondo Elementary. However, those, over the last 3 years, I mean, with COVID and everything, those really aren't accurate to say, you know, and then with, like she said, with the smaller amount of students that are there now, compared to how many students are gonna end up being there from Summer Lakes, it's gonna pose a lot of traffic flow problems, even if it's not just on Benton Road, but also on Farm Road, what is that, 1092, right out here out front of the subdivision, to cross over, again, another set of railroad tracks. It's the same thing, they're parallel to get to Williams Elementary. But again, a lot of the community members did not know. And I know Mr. Welch had emailed me and said that, you know, they posted it on social media, they had it on the Lamar's website, all these online places. But if you don't have children in the school system, you're not gonna go to Lamar's website to see what's going on. You're not going to go to their Twitter page to see what's going on, or their Facebook page to see what's going on. That's generally what parents do. You know, I mean, if you guys would have, he asked if there was a suggestion to reach out to the community. And yes, I mean, we all get a water bill. There's that pamphlet in the water bill every month, you know, with what's going on in the community. You know, if you could post it something there, or post it something in the local newspaper, you know, so that the public could actually know what's going on, that would have been a little bit more helpful. But to also have option 2 just completely thrown out before the decision's being made also poses a concern too, because who vocalized to have that done? I mean, I get that Veranda has a lot of people over there. I get that they're gonna be divided amongst 2 elementary schools, but option 2 gave the schools the ability to have equal amounts of students and not go over their capacity limits. But yes, I'm sorry. But yeah, so like I said, I went to about 200 houses this weekend, and everybody was very concerned about what was going on and why nobody really knew what was going on. And if I had the ability to, I would have been a part of the boundary committee, but I was a little busy at the time when that was going on. But I wanted to thank you also for hearing me out for today. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope you get some sleep.
Thank you. We'll see.
That is all, Madam President.
Okay, so we will now begin the public hearing on the LCISD Accountability Performance Report for 2020 through 2021.
Good evening, Madam President, honored members of the board, and Dr. Nivens. This evening, we are going to review the Texas Academic Performance Report for this past year. Just a couple of reminders. The TAPR report was formerly known as the Academic Excellence Indicator System. Reports have been published since 1990-91 to the present. It provides academic performance information on each school and district in the state of Texas, and extensive information on staff, programs, student demographics and performance. In the student information section, there's information on demographics and attendance, class size, graduation dropout rates, retention rates, and kindergarten readiness. Staff information contains demographics, experience, average salaries, and turnover rates. There's STAR information disaggregated by grade, subject, and student group, performance at approaches, meets, and master's grade level, participation rates, and finally, there's college and career readiness now, which is SAT, ACT, and TSIA performance, dual credit and on-ramps completion, advanced placement, scores and completion, and industry-based certifications. The TAPER reports can be located in 4 different areas, either the Texas Education Agency website, the LCISD website, under the Research Assessment and Accountability Department's Performance Reports and Legal Postings page, campus offices, or from the LCISD RANA office. Just as a reminder, on December 10th, 2020, the Commissioner of Education suspended ratings for the school year 2020-2021. Therefore, all campuses and districts received a rating of not rated, declared state of disaster. However, ratings will resume with the current school year. Looking back, our participation rates compared to last year versus before the pandemic. Last year, LCISD had 92% of our enrolled students take the STAR test, compared to 99% plus in 2019. Region 4 had 88%, as well as the state, compared to 99% in 2019. If we look at early childhood readiness, these indicators were created by the 86th legislative session that added more funding and assessment requirements for early childhood programs in pre-K through 3. Districts are required, starting with pre-K math, or starting with grade 3 math and reading, to target performance in the district improvement plan, as we have done last year and have done this year with our 2-year plan. Starting with the 18-19 TAPER report, the state published the results of the pre-K and kinder assessments, which at pre-K is the circle assessment, and it's coupled with the Texas kindergarten entry assessment at kinder. As you can see from this slide, our performance this past year was well above the region and about 4 points above the state with pre-K students. With kinder students, we were 12 points above the region and about 5 points above the state. So we have outperformed both the region and the state in getting kids ready to go to kindergarten and once they come into kindergarten. Looking at our STAR performance, just as a reminder, the STAR system is geared towards college readiness. And so each one of the performance levels is geared towards how likely a student will need developmental courses when they go to college. So students scoring at master's grade level are 70% likely not to have to take developmental courses in college. Meets grade level is 60% likely not to have to do that. And then a student that approaches grade level is passing the test, but will need intervention to go on to the next year and will need more intervention once they get to college readiness. What's not published is the do not meet grade level, which is the measure of students that fail, and that's usually considered whatever the opposite of approaches would be. Looking at our math performance last year, we had performance that was above both the state and the region. There was at least 8 points above, except for in grade 7. Grade 7 was where we were equal to Region 4 and just a little bit above the state. But targeting that has been an effort this year. And from preliminary data, we can see gains at that grade level coming in already. Our reading language arts performance were 3 to 13 points above the state and the regional averages. Our writing performance at grades 4 and 7 were 9 to 13 points above regional and state averages. However, at this point, we will not see writing scores again at 4th and 7th grade. Those skills are now being combined with the reading test, and so by the time we have this discussion again in the fall with STAR scores, you're not going to see the writing scores again. They'll be part of the reading test. Science was at least 6 points above the state and the region. And then social studies was at least 5 points above the state and the region. When we look at discipline and demographics, as will be discussed later tonight, we are very much a fast-growing district. We've added 15%. We've had a 15% growth in the past 5 years of approximately 5,600 students. We're also a very diverse district with growth in African American, Asian, and 2 or more races populations. Looking at our enrollment by program, sorry about that. Looking at our enrollment by program, we've increased 27% in the amount of graduates that we've had over the last 5 years. We have also seen an increase in economically disadvantaged status, but we attribute that really to the onset of the pandemic. Our current numbers kind of see that coming back down. We've had growth with bilingual ESL and also special education. A lot of that growth in special education has been due to the U.S. Department of Education and the efforts they've had with TEA and making more opportunities for students with disabilities. According to Texas Education Code 39.053, every district has to publish an annual report on serious disciplinary incidents, violent and criminal incidents at the campuses in the district. We will publish a detailed report at the legal postings webpage within the next couple of days. However, we do have a measure of that. Since we started measuring it in terms of incidents per 1,000 students back in the 14-15 school year, we have actually had our lowest number per 1,000 students this year, as well as the lowest number of incidents. Now, understandably, we had 40% of our students that were virtual last year, so this does represent a little bit of an anomaly. But when we compare it to our other large districts who are our neighbors, we actually have the lowest number of incidents per 1,000 students when compared to Katy and Fort Bend ISDs. Our 4- and 5-year graduation rates, the class of 2020 had a graduation rate that was 5 to 6 points above the state and the region. And then our 5-year graduation rate for the class of 19, which included students who had to come back to finish credits or tests, was about 4% above the state and the region. When we look at our career, college, and military readiness, this is a set of indicators that were created by the 85th legislature that includes advanced placement scores, SAT, ACT, and TSIA, which is another form of a college placement test. Dual credit completion, on-ramps, course completion, and industry-based certifications. Looking at the comparison between the classes of 19 and 20, we as a district, as well as the state and the region, saw a dip in that indicator, primarily due to the lockdown in the spring of 2020. A lot of students who would have taken, either retaken college readiness tests or would have taken industry-based certifications didn't get an opportunity to do that that spring. When we look at the indicators and how they divide out between the different ways that a student could become CCMR, meeting TSI is the most common. That's meeting the college benchmarks that exempt a student from having to have that developmental coursework that I mentioned earlier. And so our students did very well with that. Nearly 1 out of 4 of our students are taking and meeting the requirements through the advanced placement tests. Dual credit has come up to almost 20%. And then our on-ramps program, which is through the University of Texas, is growing. We've come up a full point in the last couple of years with that. And then our certification has also grown. We've come up a couple of points in that area, and we continue to come up in that area. And that's when students take a test or earn a certification like welding or computer repair, something like that, that yields a high yield income. When we look at what happens to our students beyond our doors, the class of 18, 61%, or 62% attended a college here in the state of Texas. That went down slightly for the class of 19, but with the class of 19, we also now have data from the National Clearinghouse that indicated that we had an additional 4% that went to college out of state. So actually, when we add those students into the factor, the amount of students that went to either a community college or a 4-year or a tech school after leaving us was at 63.8 for the class of 19. Going back to that idea of developmental coursework, like I said earlier, this is tied back to how well students do on not only STAR but also SAT or TSIA. Our students do much better than the state and the region. There was a large drop between the class of 18 and 19, and we, as a district, our students were able to get through that change and stayed at about 67% of our students didn't have to have developmental coursework. When we look at the top 10 institutions for the class of 2020, the most often chosen school was WCJC, followed by Houston Community College, Lone Star, University of Houston, Texas State San Marcos, Texas A&M, Blinn at Bryan, Sam Houston State, the University of Texas San Antonio, and the University of Texas at Austin. Are there any questions or comments?
I don't see any. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
At this time, we will take action on the current consent agenda and the current action items. We will be pulling, to kick it off on the second page, we'll be pulling items 14A3, A4, and A5. So other than those items, is there anything y'all would like to see pulled for the current consent or action?
I have a couple questions on J 3, 4, and 5, but they can be part of the discussion time, I believe. I don't know if we necessarily need to pull them separately. I would want to ask the administration about it, though. Okay, let's
Let's
pull
pull them. Okay, all three, or can you do one and,
them. I can just pull one.
which one?
J3.
J3. Okay, we'll pull the J3. Any others? Nope. Okay. Let's see. So may I have a motion to approve the current consent agenda and current action items with the exception of items 13J3, 14A3, 14A4, and 14A5. Ms. Danziger makes a motion, Mr. Lambert seconds. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, I call for the vote. All in favor say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, none opposed, motion carries. Okay, so we will now read the resolutions beginning on page 34.
All right. Whereas Diagnosticians Week has historically been proclaimed by the Governor of Texas to be recognized throughout Texas during the first full week of March, and whereas diagnosticians in Texas play an important role in the educational, social, and emotional development of our children, and whereas diagnosticians use specialized training to identify learning disabilities and recommend appropriate special education intervention for students, and whereas diagnosticians are in a unique position to consult with professionals in other fields when speech, physical, medical, and emotional problems are indicated. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of Lamar Consolidated Independent School District declares March 6th through the 12th, 2022 as Texas Educational Diagnosticians Week in the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District and ask our community to recognize the invaluable contributions made by educational diagnosticians. Adopted this 15th day of February 2022.
Thank you.
Whereas the students of our Texas public schools hold the promise of our future in capable hands, and whereas the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District provides the tools, framework, and solid foundation vital for the future of our children, and whereas the dedicated efforts of parents, educators, and community leaders provide the necessary support and strength to our schools, thus providing our children a quality education, and whereas the students attain a higher level of achievement because of the commitment to excellence and focus on continued improvement in our schools, and whereas for more than 60 years, the observance of Texas Public Schools Week has demonstrated the significant impact of education on our future and our communities. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Lamar Consolidated Independent School District encourages all citizens to reaffirm their commitment to public schools during Texas Public Schools Week, March 1 through 5, 2022, and urges all citizens to recognize the impact public education has had in raising past, present, and future generations of Texans. Adopted the 15th day of February 2022.
Okay, thank you. So we will begin with item 13J3.
All right, Madam President, I call Mr. McKeever up to answer Trustee Welch's question.
Two questions, and you might not know the first because I'm asking you to. I want to know if we understand why there's only 2 bids received for this item, and there were several others received for the other 2 items very similar to it. And I know you don't work for the other companies, you work for Lamar. So I'm asking you to kind of speculate a little bit, or maybe you can speak into that process. So this item only had 2 proposals received. The next item had 6 proposals, and the third item had 3 proposals received. For very similar type work, as I understand it.
It is very similar type work, and we were kind of caught as a surprise on that also. We don't really know why they didn't bid on those other projects. It was all advertised. It all went out to all of the companies, and we actually had a little bit more than that at pre-proposals, but then these particular one here, only 2 submitted. So I really can't answer that. We went through the whole gamut to get them all there, and they did not go across the board with it.
My second question is, on the criteria or the evaluation summary, there's a question that says, the extent to which the goods and services meets the district's needs. And there's a total of 15 points that can be awarded per bid. I was looking for just some kind of layman explanation of what that means exactly, because I would assume a construction company bidding on a construction project would meet the needs of the district. So how would you go about giving someone a full 15 versus an 11 or a 9 or something?
Well, we have qualifications that they submit in these bid packages, and we look at K through 12 projects that they have submitted in those packages and how they have done those projects. And then we also look at references. They check references at all their projects of the similar size. And we look at stuff that they have done for the district. And some things, you know, may count them down, but for the most part, most all of them have had pretty high scores on those.
And those scores that you guys give them is a combination, as I understand it, is the administration and our construction consultants, Rice and Gardner, and the architects as well?
Yes, sir.
So it's not just the one entity of Lamar?
No, sir.
It's several people speaking into this process?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so do I have a motion? Let's see, what is the official name? I have a motion to, make sure I'm on the right one. Consider the approval of CSP 9-222 RNG for the Bowie Elementary School and Beasley Elementary School additions and renovations.
I'll make it.
Mr. Welch makes the motion. Do I have a second? Mr. Hubenat seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. None opposed, motion carries. Okay. We're on to the action items, 14A3.
All right, Madam President, Ms. Sonia Cole Hamilton will come and speak about the Phelan Rezone Committee.
Good evening, everyone. So with Phelan Elementary opening in August of '22, Lamar CISD needs to rezone in order to create the population of students who will attend this campus. So we are seeing significant growth in many areas across our district, and it's projected that this growth will continue for the next few years. So while we're excited to build new schools and facilities, we have a responsibility to make good use of our existing resources. That means we have to take a hard look at how we are currently using existing facilities, looking at current capacity versus utilization. So currently, approximately 1/3 of Lamar CISD elementary schools are over capacity, and several schools, however, are well under their enrollment caps. And so when we look at rezoning, we look at our opportunity. And so by rezoning, students at all impacted schools can receive improved learning experiences. Rezoning to more evenly distribute our students across our schools will relieve the stretched resources and overcrowded classrooms in schools that are currently over enrollment, and will increase per capita funds and resources to schools that are currently under enrollment. So to get feedback, we developed a Phelan Attendance Boundary Committee, which met and discussed the options on January 27th and February 7th. And we've launched a survey to the potentially immediately impacted community. Members of the attendance committee and individuals who received the survey are, again, people we deemed as who were immediately potentially impacted. These were parents. And so, as noted by one of our citizens earlier this evening, it did not target residents who didn't currently have students in the district, not because we don't value their opinion, but because they're not immediately impacted by the decision, which will go into effect next year. So I do want to share the outcome of these survey results first, and then we'll talk about some of the comments we've received via email, and then the comments of the committee itself. So the online survey results, and what you're seeing is what we pulled, an initial report. The numbers changes slightly. I think we had maybe 20 or so more in the final report that I looked at, but administration shared current and projected enrollment information with members of the Phelan Attendance Boundary Committee, which included representatives from the following communities: Arredondo, Hutchinson, Thomas, and Williams. And those are the individuals who received this survey. In addition, we distributed the survey to members of this community, and this was really in honor of us honoring our promise to parents to involve them in the process. So this first slide here, I want us to look at the green sections. The green bars denote those who strongly agree or agree with this statement. The gray bar represents, neutral, neither agree nor disagree, and the two gold bars represent disagree or strongly agree. So for the sake of our data, we look at the green bars. So for the first question, the question is, which option better balances enrollments across schools? So when you look at option 1, we had 43% of the survey recipients who said they felt option 1 better balanced enrollment across schools. We had 42 select option 2 as better balancing enrollment across schools, and 50% is saying they better balance enrollment across schools. They had a chance to answer each question individually, and that's why the percentages look like that. When we look at the overall outcome of their survey, we see that 33% prefer option 1, 22% prefer option 2, with 45% of those taking the online survey preferring option 3. I do want to share some trending themes, some sentiments. We did allow some open-ended comments in the survey, and there were 5 main buckets. The first was the focus on smaller classes. People who took the survey said their decision was heavily influenced by the interest of balancing enrollment across all schools. Another theme we heard was consideration of future rezonings. Some people who took the survey were concerned, if we rezone now, will my child potentially have to rezone again in the immediate future? Protection of existing communities. We heard a lot of feedback from residents wanting to keep their communities together, specifically Veranda. Perception of Williams Elementary. We did see some feedback from residents who believe that Williams Elementary is not as aesthetically pleasing as some of our newer campus. For instance, a direct quote, someone mentioned the lack of large windows, said it gave the school a prison-like appearance. And then the last trending thing was just parents who simply wanted their kids to remain in the same school. And we can certainly understand that desire. A lot of parents really celebrating and touting the amazing teachers that we have at the existing campus, and they just didn't want to move their child. So when we talk about the feedback that we received from the Attendance Boundary Committee, I shared with them the survey feedback. And between the survey going out and our initial meeting, we received a number of emails from residents in the community. So I also shared those emails with the group. And after hearing feedback from the survey, feedback from the emails, the committee decided that the top 2 options for consideration would be 1 and 3. There was not an option that was ruled out, but rather when they were given the opportunity to state their preferences and what were the pros of each option, the committee unanimously elected options 1 and 3 as the ones they want to provide feedback on. So the question was posed, what are all the pros, all the great, amazing things about option 1, option 2, and option 3? And on the screen in front of you is just some, high-level captive sentiments of how they feel about each option. We heard several reasons against a particular zoning options. Even after the survey closed, to date, as a district, we still received additional emails. I will say that we heard traffic concerns, we heard concerns about building aesthetics. We did not hear any concerns that were academic in nature, that were focused on student achievement. We did not hear any concerns that we are scared of sending our teachers to a new school, our kids to a new school because the teachers don't care. What we did hear were logistical concerns, and we do believe that the adults in charge have the brain power in the room to address some logistical concerns. So before you this evening, trustees, I believe you had something in your board book, but I wanted you to have the version of the maps that the committee had. We wanted to give the committees our most recent demographic projections and data, so that's a separate handout of maps you have before you. So they were able to look at the current attendance zones to see what our capacity looks like, and ultimately it is the recommendation of the committee to move forward with option 3. I am prepared to answer any questions you have. I also have some colleagues. Kevin McKeever was a co-chair of the committee, and if you've got any questions for his team, he's here to answer questions. I also am aware we've got a demographers in the room, so this is the time for any questions, trustees, that you may have.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Any questions?
I have several. This is my area, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from the folks in Summer Lakes. Do we have anybody from that was on the committee here to represent the committee? I would like to hear from her if she's willing to come to the podium. And
Madam President?
in the past, we've had a presentation from the committee itself, and this time I thought we were going to have the same thing.
That's not what we decided this time. So I'm, Mr. Hunt? Okay. Any objections from the? Okay, let's maybe set a time limit, something like that, just so we don't, where this was not part of the process that we agreed on, so I'm willing to allow it if we can set maybe a time. That
About
work?
5 minutes, since we give the public speakers.
Sounds good, how about that? Okay, if she wants to.
Exactly.
Okay.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Jennifer Zamora. I do live in Summer Lakes. My daughter is in 2nd grade.
Can you hold on 1 second? So Barbara, are you keeping time? Would you mind? Okay, thank you.
So I think one thing that's important that was not noted in the slides here is that when we voted on both options 1, 2, and 3, it was very clear. There was a lot of representation on the boundary committee from Veranda, and they were very adamant about keeping their community together. We did not have that same representation on the boundary committee for Summer Lakes. I think there were only 2 of us. And so while we wouldn't say that option 2 was completely omitted and taken off the table, it most definitely was not supported, as you can see. So options 1 and 3 were placed on the windows here, and we voted on them with these little stickers. And option 3 only won by 1 vote. So 16 for option 1 and 17 people voted for option 3. And then we sat back down as a group and discussed that, and people actually wanted to change, myself included, from option 3 to option 1. So I wouldn't say it's unanimous if that's how people felt. I will also say that, to Michelle's point earlier, there are a number of people that didn't get the survey or didn't know that they had the survey in their inbox. So I think had it been distributed in a different manner, maybe by paper, as one other person mentioned, I think we would have had more participation and more people being heard. When we think about just the facts of the facts, traffic patterns are a huge concern. Keeping the community together, we get it. Maybe that doesn't weigh heavily, but we do like the teachers. We want our students to stay where they're comfortable. And so that's really important to the community. But I think at the end of the day, Summer Lakes doesn't feel that they were heard. They feel that Veranda was and we were not. And I would almost ask, maybe we send the survey out again and see. Couldn't hurt. And I think that they would then feel heard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want to ask her a question?
Yeah, I'm in that area, so that's the area I represent. I understand Benton Road. I drive past Williams every day. I put 2 people on the committee, one from my neighborhood in Rivers Run, which is going to be rezoned if we go with option 3 from Thomas to Arredondo, and one from Summer Lakes, which is potentially going to go from Arredondo to Williams. I asked the 2 folks that I put on there this past weekend by email, did you agree with option number 3? And they both wrote back and said yes. But then I've started receiving tons of people, emails from folks in Summer Lake saying, wait a minute. You know, my only concern about Williams and moving everybody over there is the traffic patterns. I mean, the teachers are just as qualified. We can get the specialists in the building that we need potentially to address 504 issues and other things if that's necessary. My biggest concern right now is the capacity problem, the capacity issue with the traffic, because it is very, very limited in and out there. And I understand what the one parent said where they said that it's already overcrowded when you're trying to drop off and pick up. So I don't really know how to move forward here, because I'm under the impression we probably need more community feedback. Now, I will say this. This process was different than the high school rezoning that we did last year.
I was on that one as well.
The high school rezoning started with the public process, and then we let the public draw the maps, and it came back to the board. This time, the board drew the maps, and we sent it out to here's 1, 2, and 3. So this is my first experience with that, and I really like the giving it to the public first, to let the public decide what they want.
And I actually made that comment to my group in the committee, that I didn't feel we had half of the amount of information that we did during Randall. None of those traffic patterns and things were provided to us beforehand, and I think that would have really helped us make different decisions, or swayed one way or the other as well. But part of that is also with Benton Road, we already know there's going to be an expansion project that's taking place, so it's only going to get worse for now.
It'll get worse until it gets better, when TxDOT
right.
finally expands that road.
Exactly.
All right, anybody else?
I have some questions, but I have them of
All right, thank you so
Other
much. I
people.
appreciate it.
Do we, and I haven't looked this up, what is the number at Williams right now? Do we have that? Because if we don't move the students, is it going down over the next few years?
I think Dr. Mossage is quickly looking that up.
Well, we have
But if we know, if
representatives.
we went with zoning one.
We have representatives from PASA in the room, and I know
Let me see the
they know
current.
our data backwards and forwards, so.
Okay, so, and the reason, if refresh my memory, we moved students away from Williams because we were having, there was so much construction, we were concerned about the traffic at that time, right, when they were building, what, the road, Reading?
Williams Way.
Williams Way to go to 59.
Right.
I know some schools have turned around their traffic patterns where the parents go in where the buses were and the buses go in the front. Is that being done right now at Manford Williams, or are the parents still coming in the front to pick up?
Currently, the parents are still coming in the front and the buses are on the side.
Okay. Because I know 762 gets crazy during pickup. I guess my biggest concern is if we don't do something now, we're gonna have to do something later, because the numbers are going to start getting bigger. And I understand why we wanted to make these big changes, but as long as I've been on the board, it's always been the policy, move is, and not have as many people affected by the move as possible. And I'm looking with 3, and it looks like 4 schools are going to have kids in and out. But the other side of it is, if I'm correct, then we don't have to move them in a later date. Is that what you're going? Okay.
So you started off asking how many students at Williams. I don't have enrollment numbers in front of me, but I do have resident numbers. The number of students who lived in the Williams attendance zone in October was 363 students.
Okay.
Currently on the website is 405 students.
Okay. And what are you predicting if we don't move students that it would?
It grows a little bit over 10 years, but not, only up to about 65% utilization of Williams. So up to about 450 or so at the end of the projection period. The reason for this proposed rezoning from Thomas to Arredondo and from Arredondo to Williams was to relieve overcrowding at Thomas, because Thomas had in October 827 resident students, so already over capacity, with big potential for growth in Thomas. And so to your point and your question about if we don't do this now, we'll have to do it later, it is my opinion that, yes, we will be back asking you to, in some way, rezone students out of Thomas.
And can I just make a point of view as far as Williams Elementary? We redid it a couple of years ago, and it's absolutely gorgeous on the inside. And some of the things inside there are not in any other elementary school, and I would love to teach there. So just as a public service announcement, but I can understand moving. My other question is, did we make accommodations for kids going into 5th grade about any grandfathered in that they don't need to move from their prospective schools?
That consideration did not come up specifically during our ABC meeting. However, we are doing it for the Bowie Beasley move, so I don't see why it cannot be implemented here as well.
Okay, but I think parents need to know that. Okay. Go ahead.
Elementary number 32, which is, it's in the works. It's by Ag Barn number 3. As I understand that, it's going to be a little bit further down from Randall High School. And if we go with option 1 on this rezone, Thomas Elementary and Summer Lake subdivision will not be touched, those zoning, but will elementary school number 32 alleviate Thomas Elementary in, I think it's a year and a half or 2 years.
Yeah, Elementary 32, which was just getting started, it was
Yep.
on the board agenda.
Yep.
Is on Powerline Road.
Right.
And that's, now when we get to that zoning, which will be next January, then we will have those options brought to us from PASA. Will it relieve Thomas? Maybe a little bit from the south side of Thomas, but Dr. Tapera could answer that question.
I think it would be more Culver.
Culver would be
The new school on Powerline Road is designed to and located in order to relieve overcrowding at Meyer and Culver. The south part of Thomas that Kevin referred to doesn't have a big population currently. It will in the future, but it does not currently. And so it's my opinion that it's not likely that anyone will be moved out of Thomas to go to this new Powerline school or to go south. The only way that Thomas would be affected during that rezoning would be if we're pulling students off of the north side of Thomas, which is what we're talking about doing here. But that's just my opinion in looking at the maps and the numbers. Anything can come to the board and go to the committee in public.
Yeah. My thinking right now is to go with option 1 and for this reason, because FM 762 and Benton Road should be built out in a couple years. I don't know what the timeline is from TxDOT. And then we'll have elementary number 32 that would help alleviate Thomas and possibly keep Summer Lakes where it's at.
I have a couple questions. Are you?
Go ahead.
Okay. I have a couple technical questions, I guess you could call them. So a couple things that were mentioned, because just for the public's sake, we already had a special board meeting to discuss this. And the board moved forward with putting maps 1, 2, 3, and then to let the committee decide and rate 1, 2, and 3. And so their recommendation is 3, and we were comfortable moving forward 1, 2, and 3 with them making the final suggestion or to the board. And so for me, I feel like we've gone through the steps here, but I have a couple things that have come up tonight. So I wanted to ask, I forget your name, I apologize, but you mentioned, is it okay, I was just gonna say, the lady that was kind enough to come up here, she said there was a smaller representation of Summer Lake's residents on the committee. Can you share a little bit about how that process was, was it an equal opportunity for the different that we offered to be on the committee, or how does that work? Why would there be some more and some less?
So the principals had the opportunity to select representatives from their campus to serve on the committee. We checked with FMP to ensure that the principal was aware of which neighborhoods, specific neighborhoods would be affected, and to try to solicit representatives from those neighborhoods. So that was up to the principals. In addition, trustees had an opportunity to appoint additional members to the committee. We did not have everyone invited show up, but we did invite every single name that we were submitted.
Okay, that's good to know. So some people just didn't want to take the opportunity, I guess, so, but we did invite them. Okay, so the representative, I mean, that's just how it goes sometimes. I like that you said that we reached out to the immediately affected, because those are the ones that have stake in the game at this point, and they would be, everybody else next year wouldn't know any different, I guess. So I think that's important to note. I think maybe going forward, my thought as a parent would be, would I want somebody that doesn't, school's not affecting them at this point, and maybe they don't have kids, or, you know, their kids have outgrown, to have the same say-so as someone who has current kids in the school. And so I don't know what that would look like. I think we can always increase our communication, maybe by paper, that type of thing too. But I think it's something for the parents to consider is, do they want someone who doesn't have kids, maybe won't have kids, to have the same type of weighted vote? So I'm not saying we shouldn't communicate better, but I think that's something to consider for the next time we do this. So I think it's definitely worth looking into. My last question would be, I know it's an issue with the text dot, that type of thing, and that's not really in our control, but the parking, I think somebody mentioned parking earlier. So what is, have we discussed that and what that could possibly look like that is within our control?
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, but you're talking
So-
like the parent drop-off and the changing that
So I'll say, when Dr.
configuration.
Nivens and I went and visited Williams Elementary recently, not for this purpose, we were just out visiting campuses, and so I remember having a conversation with you, the land, the grassland that's on the other side of the building, and I'm terrible with north, south, east, west, so whatever it was, where there's currently grass, I know we kind of spoke about if there's a possibility of using that land to to help out with the traffic control, and so I don't know how you would, I don't have the coordinates of that land, and I'm.
Right, I remember that. And so we had talked about additional concrete in that area for parking and for parent drop-off. So Kevin, do we have any information on that?
We did get a traffic study a few years ago done when Williams Way was under construction from the county when they were doing that. And we do have some options that we can do. It would involve flipping the parent drop-off with the transportation for the buses. There's some issues that happen when you do that as well.
Like what type of issues?
Like when they're buses, we'd have to modify the front so the buses can make the corner, when they come in and go around. And then every one of the buses that comes out of Williams has to take a left and then go down that way, because all their routes go that direction coming out of Williams. Now, you're only talking about the number of buses that are coming out of there. The other one is, currently we have a project about to start that's going to add concrete where the driveways are coming in from Williams Way, and we will be increasing the side where the bus ramp is now, increasing that. Now, there's options from the traffic study that gave us options to increase that if you were to flip it, then you can go up behind the playground and do a loop and come back down to add more stack space. That part of it, we haven't got funding for that just yet. That could be on a future bond or something like that.
So that's an option to.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I was trying to think if I had anything else. So just for the public's sake, we did have a whole meeting on this, but if you didn't get a chance, the board sent through 1, 2, 3 on the recommendation from PASA, and then, as you stated, that the committee knocked out 2 and went with 1 and 3 as a rating system, and then the highest number that was chosen by rating was option 3.
Option 3, the highest number from the committee as well as the survey that we put out. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Was there, from the folks that showed up that last night and made the final vote for option 3, was it really close? Was it
Oh, certainly, yes, sir.
I mean, so it wasn't an exaggerated, 15 to 3 vote or anything? So
No.
it was really close?
It was close, yes, sir.
So had one or two other folks not been there, it could have been option 1 they've been recommending, obviously, because, yeah. Did the survey that went out to the public, were those all the email addresses of parents in the 5 schools affected? Or how was that sent out?
The survey
I
went
thought
out to
you-
the public were for the 4 campuses, for Arredondo, Hutchinson, Thomas, and Williams.
How'd that survey go out? How was that communicated to the public?
Via email, direct email to the parents. We pull the parent email addresses from our Skyward Management System. Tech team gives us the parent emails, and K-12 Insights, a third party, distributes the email on our behalf. They collect the data, and then they, compile the data and send it back to us.
So that's one thing I didn't mention to the last lady who spoke, who sent me a very thorough email. And she's very concerned with her neighborhood. She said, "Why didn't the district do this?" And I said, "Well, we put it on the website. But we also, I didn't mention this. We also sent out an email to all of those parents. Now, whether they checked it or not is not up to us, or whether it went in their spam folder or something. We have no control over that. But we sent the survey. You're saying."
Right, yes. K-12 sends it on our behalf. We also provided, usually we do surveys for parents. We ask the campus principals to also drop it in their campus newsletters. So we try to communicate as many different ways as possible to the most impacted community.
Can I have one?
Yes.
All right, if zoning option 3 also moves students from Thomas to Arredondo, is that correct?
Say it again, you're asking
Yeah.
her.
I'm looking at,
Uh-huh.
and
That block
how
right
many,
there.
do we know how many students that affects too?
Kevin, do you know in that block right there?
That little block, 44N, I guess it's,
There's 44B and
44K, I meant, yeah.
44K.
You know the number?
Huh? Okay, do you know how? So right now that is going to Thomas and it's being looked at to go to Arredondo to alleviate Thomas, because I know Thomas is one of those schools that constantly we're trying to bring the numbers down. And if we end up voting in the new master plan principles, if we don't do something, they're still not gonna be where we want them, right? No, but I'm looking at zoning, yes, it will be if we adjust it, but if we if we don't, it won't, right? Yeah. Because Thomas, by 2023, they're right now at 750, they would come down, or no, 750 capacity, come down to 593. But I know they're over 800 right now, I'm sure.
You were asking about the planning unit to be moved from Thomas to Arredondo has about 250 elementary students.
Right, because I'm looking at this. And there were people on the committee from that subdivision too, I would assume.
I put one of them, a parent. I was able to appoint 2 people to the committee. So I put one from my neighborhood, which is the one we're talking about.
Okay.
And I put one from Summer Lakes.
Okay.
I think Mr. Hunt, are you?
No, I'm done, I'm
You're
sorry.
good? Okay, no, you're good. Mr. Hunt had a question.
So I just had a question, and you may have addressed it, I might have missed it, but option 3 in this area for elementary schools should keep us out of the portable business for the next 8 years. If everything shakes out.
If everything shakes out, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
On option 1, if we choose option 1, it doesn't have the numbers for Thomas on there. And it says by 2030, 2031, they'll be at 990. So a new school will need to be built down there.
Now, we've got the Power Line Road School, but that's for Culver and Meyer. So if we don't if we choose option 1 and we don't address Thomas, then what are our options? To me, it seems like you got to build a new school, or at some point, we've got to readdress the boundaries. Are those the only, or is that accurate?
If Thomas doesn't receive any relief, if it stays, the attendance zone stay the same, about 900 students by about 2025. Is that what you're asking? And so, yes, something has to be done to relieve that overcrowding, projecting to grow to 1,000 students by the end of the projection period. So, in my opinion, that's not enough students to open another school in the area alone. And currently there's not a logical good place to place a school and pull some students from Thomas and other schools in order to fill a school. So it's my opinion that Thomas is overcrowded, or you move some students out of Thomas from the north, which is where all the population is.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question. So, but like with the portables and that type of thing, eventually with our growth, there's going to be movement. And so it makes the most sense because everybody's going to, these people will all be affected down the road regardless, correct? I don't know. Is that too vague of a question?
Well, I just completed a long-range study, right? And that's what we'll be presenting tonight.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go into this great of detail because of time constraints.
Yeah.
But in this long-range plan, I did not call for a school to relieve Thomas because of the availability of existing capacity elsewhere in the area. So in the long-range plan that you will see, you will not see a school in the area south of Thomas in order to, as you say, move these students again.
If we did option 3.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
So you're asking us to make a decision so that we better utilize the schools that we have built at this time to bring our elementary schools in those areas at capacity or under capacity for the next 3 to 5 years, I assume. Is that accurate?
Sure. My assumption in developing this long-range plan was that the committee and the survey had voted for option 3, and so I assumed that that was going to happen. And so I'm looking at this long-range plan, and as a result, you don't need a new school.
Okay, thank you.
Hang on. Would there be any harm in adopting option number one, and moving kids out of Thomas in a couple of years from now, whenever the road system around Williams is built out a little bit more? I mean, it's not ideal, I know that. And we already have a couple schools, at least one over 1,000 students. It's manageable. But there would be no harm in necessarily leaving my neighborhood alone and Summer Lakes alone right now and moving them in 3 or 4 years because they wouldn't be moved twice. Correct?
Sure.
So that would be the benefit of option number 1. I'm really for option number 3. My only kicker here is I love public input on all this stuff, and I don't like the way we reverse the process. And I'm just now realizing and understanding this, that the board came up with it and pitched 1, 2, or 3, as opposed to giving it to them and let them give it back to us. And then we dive into why they came up with that. I feel like we could have had a different map had the role been reversed, or the process been reversed. So that's my hesitation with option number 3, because I came in here tonight thinking I'm going to vote for it, but I'm not sure I can support it right
I mean, I will say that we went through this process and we all agreed to it as board members, so
Right,
it's
and
not
we
a
did.
surprise that what we're doing.
Well, you're implying that we knew all the factors, but what you and I didn't get when we were making that decision is that we didn't have the input from the public, and we didn't have the traffic studies, and we didn't have those other kind of things. So,
We said as a group, as a team,
yeah,
that we would present 3 options, so
Right.
things did not get out of hand like the last one, and we were all for that, and so
Right.
it, I mean, I just want to be clear that we all did agree
yes,
to it.
I did, and I think that and because of that, it was the first time doing that, I don't think that I understood some of the factors that we could have missed by doing it that way.
I hear you. Okay, any other comments? I'll just say rezoning is never easy. Never easy.
The Tamaron rezoning was easy with Lindsay.
Okay, so maybe that one was, but most of them are not. And I mean, it pulls at your heartstrings, all these things. I mean, you know, we're parents, we're all these things, and so we all have to think about these things. But we try to do the best process, and we all agreed that we wanted to move forward with this process this year, and we felt like it was going to be a better way. And sometimes people participate, and sometimes people don't. And so there's only so many things that we can do. We appreciate the public input. I know I do. But the committee has spoken, and we gave them the options, so. Okay, well, do I have a motion? Yes. Okay, Mr. Hubenak makes a motion. Do I have a second?
And what is the motion?
To consider the attendance boundary for Phelan Elementary School. We're on action for 14A3 is what we've been discussing. Okay, Ms. Danziger seconds. Any further discussion? Okay. So, all in favor, raise your hand, say aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Mr. Welch? Okay, motion carries. Okay, next is item 14A4.
Yes, Madam President, our district academic calendar, and Ms. Cole Hamilton will present that for us.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, so last month or so, I stood before you and I gave you a high-level overview of the process. This evening, I would like to present to you a recommendation for your consideration. We did launch a survey via K-12 to parents, staff, and students. On the screen before you is the number of total respondents. You know, K-12 tells us that a 10% response rate is most ideal. And so with our staff, we saw a 43% response rate. With students, it was less than 1%, and we weren't able to get the conclusive data for the parent guardians, but we did have over 4,000 respond. Just for the calendar options comparison by participant group. So again, looking at the green bar represents parents and guardians, the blue bar represents staff, and the yellow bar represents students. So looking at the 3 different groups, of all 3 groups, they all prefer calendar option B. So just a deep dive into each calendar option. Oh, I'm sorry. I want to talk about spring break. So we did utilize our calendar as an opportunity to gain some additional data from those taking the survey. When our calendar committee was putting together options, one thing they discussed was whether or not we should or could reduce days from Thanksgiving to reallocate those days elsewhere. And even though that was a discussion among the committee, it was not a part of any of the options we put forward. We did commit in the committee to let's at least gauge sentiments regarding Thanksgiving break, and our community was loud and clear. Do not touch Thanksgiving break. We asked how important is it to you for you to have a full week off. The green bar represents important, and the gold bar represents unimportant. So according to our community right now, Thanksgiving break is untouchable. But we did also want to ask and gauge sentiments regarding adjusting start times. That was another conversation that came out of the calendar committee group. So the question is, how desirable would it be for high schools to start earlier than elementary schools? So again, the green bars represent very desirable and desirable, and the gold bars represent undesirable and very undesirable. The gray bars represent neutral. So for us, what this data shows is we have a lot of people in the gray, meaning they just don't understand pros nor cons. And so if this is something we want to to explore in the future. To Trustee Welch's point, we've got to really do a good job of educating and engaging the public so they have a deep awareness of what kind of implication it could have for their student, and then we can further gauge their sentiments. Right now, with majority of parents and staff falling in the gray column, it wouldn't be useful data for us to move forward with such a consideration until they have an understanding and an awareness of what adjusting the start times could do. So ultimately, after the feedback we received from the survey, it is our recommendation that we move forward with calendar option B. Again, the two options we put forward both meet all of the the requirements. You all have a comparison chart that we provided for you all today, so you can see the difference between option A and B, but it is our recommendation that you consider calendar option B for consideration.
Thank you. Any questions?
Flip-flopping the start times, pros and cons of doing that. So from a parent standpoint, with the secondary having the most extracurricular activities, and me having to participate in that, and being well after dark, and these students still have quite a bit of homework, it seems to reason that that would be beneficial to have that activity start earlier in the day.
That could be one. And just speaking from personal experience from a district that did flip, another benefit would be at our secondary level, typically those students have to leave, the athletes leave early to go compete. And sometimes those teachers are core classes, so that you have subs. Well, if they're starting earlier, that's less time that they've got to leave during the actual school day to impact instruction. And so that's less, opportunities we need to put a sub in the class. Also, it gives them an opportunity to participate in externships much earlier, getting out, so their school day could end at 2 o'clock or so, and that they can go and get that extra experience in addition to working, but also certainly getting home at an earlier time so they're not too late into the evening during homework and things like that.
From the holidays, I see the only one we don't have is the day after Easter is what's been taken out because that was in calendar A and not calendar B. We have our bad weather days. I know we do by minutes, so I guess it doesn't matter that it's 2 days less instructional days. Is that correct? Because of our time, of our start time and end time during the day, we make up that minutes, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And a few years ago when we did that survey, it was a lot of it was high school teachers that didn't want to start early because they're used to being there. And of course, it also means that you need to deal with the parents that are in elementary now that are about ready to go to secondary. They're like, oh, no, I want, so it's going to be a fine line to find those right parents that will say, okay, I'll make the flip, because nobody's going to be happy when you do it. And then there'll be ones that are just loving it. So it's just a matter of finding the right time.
Any other questions?
Was there any discussion in the calendar committee about the additional 4 half days? I mean, about that potentially creating an issue for childcare for parents, that there would be 4 half days that they would need to try to work out?
No, that wasn't a particular issue that came up during the course of discussion.
Okay.
But you would have to contact the different daycares and providers, because then they would have those kids earlier in the day. So I know that a lot of, that we've heard in the past, that they want input on that too, because then the parents would have to.
It creates a hardship for the academics.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Thank
Dr.
you.
Somebody said, thank you. Dr. Nevins, what is the recommendation of the district?
Yes, ma'am. The recommendation of the district is for the board to adopt option B.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to approve? I saw you first. Mr. Lambert makes the motion and Ms. Danziger seconds. Thank you. Any further discussion?
I just had a quick question. Option B was the one that was in the survey. That was the one that was most wanted by parents and staff.
Yes, sir. The vast majority of everyone chose option B.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Yes, sir.
I don't know. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Okay.
Presentation for that because we did it earlier. So you just call for a motion for master plan principles.
So I would like to, is there a motion to consider the approval of the master plan principles? Ms. Danziger makes a motion. Do I have a second? He went up first. Mr. Welch seconds the motion. Any discussion? Ms. Danziger?
I just have a quick question. During the presentation earlier tonight, it was stated that we would create schools or make the schools that would meet the capacity of the changes. Right now, we're building junior highs for 1,400. Would we be changing that? Or just know that we're putting 1,250 in there? Are we gonna change the design of the junior highs?
The principals are changing from 1,400 to 1,250.
Down to 1,250.
Currently, we're building our junior highs at 1,200. So we would actually just increase that size and design them for 1,250.
So we haven't even been building them for 1,400?
No, ma'am.
Okay, good to know. All right, because every one you said we would be, and each one of those, we can take the designs we have and build them out more. We don't have to start from scratch. Am I correct?
We can take our repeat designs and increase, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have a quick question. Did you have something?
Go ahead. I'll ask after.
Mr. Tucker spoke earlier, and he asked a few things. I just want to address them real fast. One, it says the following objectives are used and considered as much as possible when developing the new attendance zones. And if I understood him correctly, that's what he was talking about. But I think the verbiage there is important because we can't promise all of these things, but we will take them as much as possible into consideration depending on the situation. So that's why I think that wording is important. Number two, he asked if there were any benefits to making bigger schools. And so would you just recap quickly why we're deciding on 2,500 versus 2,000? Is that too vague?
If I'm remembering our conversations that we had, if we go to 2,500, then that means, then when we build 4 schools, it would reduce 1. We would have had to build 5, and we would reduce a high school on that side.
So I know taxpayers appreciate that as well. So there are benefits, but he said he couldn't think of any. I think that's what he said. So I just wanted to note that there are some benefits that, to the decision. Did you have something, Mr. Welch?
Yeah, I have 2 questions, and these are what I asked last month. And I know, Mr. McKeever, you weren't in this role last month, so it's a little unfair to be pitching this to you. Was there any follow-up to the idea of building one junior high with 6th, 7th, and 8th, but housing 6th grade as a school within a school, basically having separate facilities under one roof? Was there any analysis done of the possible savings of doing that?
I did get some numbers for building a junior high with 6, 7, and 8. But now to add separate cafeterias and separate gyms for that 6th grade, no. It was just a junior high for 6, 7, and 8, which it's about 121 million, excuse me, to build a building like that, which is a little bit more expensive just because of the square footage is a little higher. You're looking at approximately 270,000 square feet versus the 200,000 square feet that we're currently building. So it is more expensive to do that. I did not break it out.
So it's 200,000 currently for the 7th and 8th grade campus.
That's correct.
So it increased that by 70,000, but house another grade in that 70,000.
Correct.
That would ideally not interact with the other two grades, as far as the
It would have-
cafeteria.
It would have another set of classrooms for another grade level.
I know that the 6th grade standalone campuses are very popular in Lamar, and I'm not looking to change that. What I am interested in doing, though, is saving taxpayer dollars if we can have the same concept under one roof. You'd probably maybe a bigger air conditioning, but not two different air conditionings. You could possibly put the cafeterias back to back and share the kitchen. Some things like that could, and you wouldn't have to necessarily have as big of a land footprint, I would assume, but.
No.
The other question that I asked was, is there any analysis done on the current high school campuses? Could we add a wing and increase the capacity from the 2,000 to 2,500?
And yes, we did look at that. 4 out of the 6 campuses would be very easy to add and increase enrollment to 2,500. The 2 oldest campuses, which would be Terry High School and Lamar Consolidated High School, are a little more challenging to do that. Can it be done? Sure it can. And so you'd be adding 15 additional classrooms, 4 additional science classrooms, a prep room. You would have to increase the size of the library, and you would have to add restrooms and increase the size of your central plant and your cafeteria. So you're looking at about an increase of 36,000 square feet per facility, and about 17,200,000 and some change to increase at those. Now, Lamar High School is a different animal for the way it is, and so there
The
would.
physical place of where it sits.
Yes, sir. So there may be some additional costs there, but that's what we looked at.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Do I have a motion to, did I already do a motion? I already did a motion, didn't I? All right, I'll take the vote.
Can
It's
let
almost-
me pause and ask one more question.
Too late, I'm just kidding.
Like, darn. Let's talk about the principle number 4. And I guess this would probably fall under the as much as possible verbiage at the top, because this was talked about a little bit in the last month, but it's not possible to do that with the way the population has purchased homes and where they live, from what I understand, without busing students all over the district to achieve this. Is that correct, Dr. Nibbs?
That's correct. It's not impossible, but it'd be very difficult to do that.
So if someone were to challenge us, why aren't you doing this? We would say, well, as much as possible.
That's correct. Yes, sir, that's correct.
So with that in mind, I'm wondering why we're even leaving that in there. Why don't we just take it out? I mean, what's the point of having that there other than as a statement we can point to?
To me, it would be if we're coming down to a deciding factor, and that would be something we'd take into consideration. If everything else was 100% equal, you know what I mean? It's just something to consider. That's where I land on that.
I mean, I read this as we're saying that these are our objectives, these are our goals, this is what we're trying to achieve, and in the event that it's absolutely impossible, then it's not possible, and so we have as much as possible language in there. But I think it's important to have that statement in there because it should be one of the things that we impress upon attendance boundary committees, that it's something that they should have in mind when they're considering drawing these boundaries.
No more questions?
Okay.
No more discussion?
Okay, I officially call for the vote. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Okay. So information items, sort of. So we are. So do I need to say that we're gonna adjust it? Okay, so due to timing, we are going to postpone the demographic update. Just kidding, just kidding. Just kidding, just kidding. But we are going to postpone information items 1, 3, and 4 until next month. Y'all can clap if you want, but, so we're just gonna have only the demographic update this evening.
Technical difficulties. One second. But I can actually get started beforehand.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Let's get going. We have a lot to
Let's
talk
get
about.
going. All
So,
right.
last year you guys did not hear from me thanks to the freeze. But one thing I was going to say was that we have been projecting for years that the early 2020s was when we're about to start seeing growth. It happened about a year earlier, just because of the housing acceleration in 2020 and 2021. Low mortgage rates. So it's unfortunate. Your growth spike hit during this housing boom. So you got hit hard, and you can see that in your growth numbers. But let's get started. There's a lot to talk about, and I am on a little bit of a time limit because I know we're gonna have a lot of Q&A. So first off, the pandemic affected enrollment. We know this because in 2020, you didn't hit your mark, and you had a 40% increase in housing beyond what was thought. So we had always estimated there might be anywhere between 700 and 1,000 extra students in 2020 that we didn't know about. And that's true because this year you had 3,000 enroll, well beyond what should have happened. So you had a lot of COVID recapture. We're uncertain exactly how many students remain in this district. In a lot of districts, it's very clear because the housing growth in this district surpassed what we thought would happen in 2020 and a little in 2021. That it's hard to say exactly how many people did move in and how many didn't actually attend in 2020. We think there still may be several hundred students, but that could be a little bit greater. It's really difficult to say. So we had this housing acceleration happening in tandem with the growth. We also have some charter school expansions I'll get to later. But let's talk real quickly about jobs. They're recovering quickly in 2021. We should be back to normal by the end of the year. Yeah, pre-COVID. So new home construction, I've already talked about it. Historically low mortgage rates are really what's driving a lot of this growth. We're thinking that could start stabilizing, especially if we see a little more higher inflation, higher interest rates occurring in the next year. And we'll get to that in a second too. Real quick, we always like to show you how much you're growing. So in the last 5 years, not this year included, but 15 to 20, because we don't have the full data set yet from the TEA, you gained 6,800. You and Katie are on top. You're number 2, still below Katie. I guarantee you'll be flipping in the next 10 years at some point. In terms of numeric growth of 1 year, 19 to 20, you're on top. And you blew it out of the water, right? So you had almost 1,400 new students in 2020, number 1 out of 61 districts in the metro area. In terms of statewide growth, you're number 1 also from 19 to 20 of that's the districts with over 20,000 students. So the big guys, you're number 1 in the room with the big guys. By a lot, actually. Most large districts lost, they were in the negatives, just because they were more mature and didn't have that housing growth that you have. All right, I don't know if any of you are new as of this year. Is that correct? You're the new one. Okay, I couldn't remember. I see a lot of different faces. Real quickly, you're gonna see a lot of split areas of the district, a lot of what we call planning units. We do that so we can easily create future catchment areas for your attendance boundary planning and long-range planning. So I'll talk a lot about planning units. It's basically your attendance zones split up. We actually have someone who drives your new neighborhoods annually at the time of your snapshot. Everything we do here is projected from October to October. We know you don't start with the same number of students that you officially get snapshot enrollment for in late October, your official budget number, if you will. So when we drive neighborhoods to understand how many homes are occupied in October, or very end of the year. This year, I think we did it in early December, but basically in the fall. So we know exactly how many students live in each neighborhood and how many homes are occupied, so we can assign a value of average number of students to those neighborhoods, and they vary everywhere. We also don't just look at what's active, developments that are active, we look at what's happening, what's about to happen. We'll interview anyone from a land broker to a real estate agent to a builder to a developer to city managers across your city. You have 12 or maybe even 15 cities, I can't remember exactly. But anyway, we do a lot of research that goes into these housing numbers. This first map is showing you 1-year growth by planning unit. Those red planning units are hot spots of at least 200 new homes going in between December and this coming October. So you can see the hot spots. The background is going to be the same, but we're going to move from north to south. And so if you are geographically impaired, yeah, just bear with me. Yeah, focus. Every neighborhood on these series of maps either started construction, it started development in the last 12 months, or it's been planned recently. Maybe a general plan has been submitted with a city. Some of them have been kind of thought to develop, but they're all getting started, basically, and there are a lot. Summerview and Century Communities bought some land up on the county line. They did Polo Ranch. Summerview is now planned for over 300 lots. Cross Creek West and Tamaron West both now have streets on the ground. This is off of what used to be Woods Road. I believe it's now called Jordan Road, which goes from the Ross Dress for Less new giant 2 million square foot facility near I-10 all the way down to Fulshire. So that road you will see, if you haven't driven it lately, I highly recommend going out there just so you can see the construction and really understand the pace of development we're talking about, because it's almost as far as the eye can see. Remember, you're number one in terms of growth. Fulshire Lakes finally got going. That's where Morgan Elementary is. After all these years, we've been waiting for the developer to get going. It's going. 4 sections now. Pecan Ridge is right next door. It got going this year. It's about 800 lots. And Del Webb Fulshire, thankfully, you don't have to worry about it. It's going to be a 55-plus community. It also got going this year. North Central, not a lot to talk about compared to the far northwest, but we still have some big developments. I want to draw your eye to that 723 corridor. Candela got going in the last year. 1,300 lots remain. You have a new elementary site. The school might be under construction now, I believe. Candela South has been planned, a little bit south, along 359 actually, between 723 and 359. A couple of 300 to 400 lots, and the Stout Tract, I don't know every bit of information on it, but I know it's about to develop. The mud is getting ready for it. I've been told that D.R. Horton might be the one that will develop it. So you could expect potentially 800 lots there as well. Moving to the southeast, we have a lot of action this year in the south, more so than we ever have. All of these neighborhoods have been planned in the last year or either got going, don't forget that. But I want to draw your eye to one in particular, Austin Point, very far southern part of your district off 762, south of the George Ranch. Over 4,000 acres planned by Signorelli. They bought the land a few years ago. They're supposed to get going on the first sections this year. Mid-year is what I've been told. Because it's so far removed, it's going to take a while for that area to get enough students to support a campus. Don't forget that. Stacy will get back to that. But it will ramp up if the economy stays the same as it is now. You can expect eventually them to get up to several hundred homes a year in Austin Point. Those 3 neighborhoods on the bottom, actually all those neighborhoods, do you see this cluster right here? That's that Copeland Road, Powerline Road corridor. That's where that new elementary is going. It couldn't be in a better spot because all of these new neighborhoods will likely be served by that new elementary school. You've got a lot coming into that area. That school's going to be needed to relieve those other campuses down there. The George Foundation tracts, they own, I think it's 16,000 acres in the southeast part of your district. They're going to have to start selling land off eventually. In the next 5, 6 years, start thinking about that, because the land around Randall High School could be the first to go. But it's yet to be even marketed. So we don't exactly know what will happen, but we do know that the foundation does need to start selling off its land eventually. So moving to the southwest, normally we have nothing to talk about, basically southwest of Rosenberg, but not this year. Signorelli did start with Tejas Village in Beasley, 150 homes. They're going up now. We have a few other scattered developments in Beasley, but these two over here west of 36 off Cottonwood School Road are important. Combined, they have about 1,000 lots. LGI seems to be the player in Baymore Farms. Neither of them are off the ground yet, by the way. And Lennar is proposing 450 lots in Miller's Pond. That one should get going soon. They've started platting officially with the city of Rosenberg. The big guy down here is Land Tejas, who has officially gotten a development agreement with the city of Rosenberg. I know it's far, but the city of Rosenberg's ETJ actually crosses into that development, the very far southwest. So it's about 1,000 acres, planned for 2,300 lots. I'm gonna be the first to tell you, I don't know a lot about it. It just recently happened. I don't have a great contact there. We need to be vigilant of it. We need to understand when they want to get started. We've been fairly conservative just because it's so far out. You know, I think this is a long play for them, but we'll see. So we have projected for it down there between Kendleton and Beasley. This chart shows your single-family housing growth from today, going back to 2015, but it also shows forward. So the purple lines have happened. These are the occupancies, the single-family occupancies that have occurred annually over about the last 7 years. Notice the last year, well, actually, notice the last 2 years. You went from less than 3,000 to boom, 4,100, bam, 5,100. Annual occupancies. That's just single-family homes. Our projections, you will immediately notice, well, why did you drop them? It's very difficult to keep increasing them from this point, because we know that we might be in a little bit of a housing peak. It's hard to say exactly when it's going to slow down, but knowing that interest rates might actually start rising soon, we have to think about that. So we've been a little conservative in projecting, but you will notice the trend is to continue going up, because you're on the frontier. Right now, you have about 12 to 15% of the market in the Houston metro area with these 5,000 homes annually. We can't forget about apartments, so I've lumped them all together here. This is a hotspot map of the next 5 years of apartment occupancies. There are 3 very specific regions. This 762 Brazos Town Center area, the Grand Parkway corridor, Peak Road corridor, and then the Texas Heritage Parkway corridor, where we have several new apartments planned in many of the master plan communities, many of which will start getting going in the next couple of years. Right now, you only have 3 under construction, but in the next couple of years, you can anticipate that to triple. So we have 195 apartment occupancies projected for this coming October, basically between today and October, not even 200. They're all under construction. But by 2023, look what happens, 1,100 new apartment occupancies projected. All those that are under construction or about to start should be getting occupied then, and then even more in 2024. Now, there will likely be a little bit of a bubble there, and what we're projecting is that to level out long-term, maybe about 1,200 apartment units on average occupied in the district after 2024. That can always change with the market. But anyway, apartments make up about 19% of your total projections, but not as many students live in them. I'll get to that in a second. Overall, this is the number that the paper is going to report tomorrow. Overall, 65,352 new housing units projected in the next 10 years. The number always creeps up a little bit every year because we're continuing to move forward in time. But you can see here, we're going to continue that streak of over 4,000, 5,000 new homes. The apartments are going to continue their streak as well. So yeah, there's a lot of new houses coming. It shouldn't end anytime soon. It's going to go up and down with the economy. That's hard to predict. So let's talk about those students per home. On average, every single house in this district, if you take everything from north, south, east, west, 0.55 students per home, meaning for every 100 homes, 55 LCISD students in pre-K through 12. Not every neighborhood is 0.55, but that's your average. Many new neighborhoods have much, much higher ratios per home. That's why we determine that number for every single subdivision so we know how to project forward. Some have quite a bit lower. Apartments average 0.35, but most of your new apartments do not get anywhere close to that. Lamar CISD has a lot of older apartment stock with a lot higher student ratios. A lot of newer apartments being planned today actually have more one bedrooms than they did even 3 years ago. I think that might have something to do with the market. Mortgages are lower right now, so people can afford a home instead of a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment. So we factor those kind of things in as well. Real quick, private and charter schools. I want you to focus on these bottom 3 numbers here. We survey private schools, and we estimate you might have somewhere approaching 1,000 students in private school. Our charter school data from the state is always lagging a year, but we also contact several charter schools that we know to enroll a lot from LCISD. We estimate that number to be about 700. So basically 700 students in LCISD living here attend charter schools. And then over 700 attend nearby districts such as Needville, Katy, Fort Bend. This right here I want to point your attention to. IL Texas Fort Bend is planning a campus. We've recently learned that their land that they've purchased or purchasing is on FM 359 near the Pecan Grove neighborhood. They typically open almost right away with their full enrollment. So the one on West Park, the one on the Fort Bend County, Harris County line, they serve your district as well. When they opened at full capacity. And I will be the first to tell you, I drove by the school on West Park when they opened a couple of years ago. In March, there was a slab, and by July, there were people in the building. That's how quick they put them up. So it is currently a field. Their amendment to TEA was to open in August 2022. It's unclear if they actually will, but if they don't, they could always open in a temporary building somewhere and then fill their actual campus up when it gets built in 2023. We need to watch that because that could affect your enrollment next year dramatically. It's likely to affect both school districts, Fort Bend and Lamar. And remember I said they open up with all grades right away. Not every charter school does, but IL Texas does. And this one should be a K-8. So they're planning to enroll 1,400 students. There you go. So if you half that, that's 700 in Lamar, 700 in Fort Bend. It's really difficult to understand where they're going to pull them from. Very difficult. But I would just assume half-half today. There is also a Harmony School, I forgot to mention, that is under construction on Bel Air. That is in your school district, up in the, near Peak Road, just east of Peak Road. That will be an additional Harmony School for the Harmony Katy cluster up at Grand Parkway and 1093. All that means is basically now their K-12 is going to be spread across 3 schools instead of 2. So they'll be expanding likely every single grade level. So you'll probably lose a few students from that cluster as well when that opens in August. So we've accounted for that in the projections for those campuses in the far north. So let's look forward. Today we're sitting, well, October, we were sitting at 39,579. If we move that forward 5 years, a staggering 53,000 students. And then another 5 years, our moderate growth scenario is just shy of 70,000. The low and the high, it looks really tight on this chart just because of the sheer numbers. But basically a low growth scenario could mean the economy slows down. Maybe we start getting 15-20% fewer homes constructed in the metro area every year, getting back to somewhat normal levels, which we've actually already projected for somewhat. We also could see more charter school growth, more of these schools opening up inside LCISD. If that happens, you would trend lower. Your higher growth scenario could mean many different things, such as your neighborhoods are generating more and more students. Maybe some of these new developments that I mentioned take off quicker. There's always that possibility. So this is just showing you the growth every single year. I do want to point out year one, which is October 2022, next year. Normally, I am very confident with year one numbers, but with all of our clients the last 2 years, I can't be because of COVID. It's been so difficult to understand when the students will return. You can imagine this year with some of our districts who lost 1,500, 3,000 students. When the wave hit in August, you know, everyone's thoughts just flew out the window as to what was going to happen. But with you, I believe you just don't have as many students to recapture. I think a lot of them have come back based on the numbers we're seeing. So we're a little more confident in it. Just know that the 3,000 students you added this year, upwards of 1,000 of that was COVID recapture, most likely. It's hard to pin that down exactly, but we likely will not see that 3,000 number, that plus 3,000 hit again. We've also factored in some of this charter school growth in this number as well. I'm going to tell you the high growth scenario is closer to 2,700. If that IL campus does not start and open up, you could have a little bit higher enrollment than this. Just monitor it. Start thinking about that. But overall, your growth should trend toward, on average, 3,000 students a year for quite some time. Basically, we've gotten to that point that we've been anticipating for the last 15, 20 years, however long we've been working with you guys. But the last 5 to 10 is when we've really been monitoring this time frame, and it's here. And it accelerated in 2020 because of this housing market. So you guys are tasked now with dealing with the growth. Stacy is going to come up here and talk about how it relates to your campuses. And I know that's of interest to everyone right now. And I'm going to try to figure out how to fix this doohickey. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, long-range planning. We are going to breeze through this. Again, this is a hotspot map like you've seen before. The red hotspots in this case are students gained rather than houses gained, but they're largely in the same spots. Again, you see the concentrations of red up in the far northwest, the central north, and then down in the south. But what does this mean as far as, these just look like blobs of color on the map. What does this mean compared to schools and which schools are being affected and by how much? So, this is low on battery. So let's look up at the north. These are the number of students projected to be added to each of these schools over the next 10 years. Those, those numbers represent how many new students in addition to, no, the laptop here. Oh, okay. So in other words, this is saying that Morgan is projected to gain another school's worth of students, plus 871. That's a whole additional school planning to move, projected to move into Morgan. Tamaron is 2 additional schools. Lindsay is 1 additional school. Huggins is, what's 2,700 divided by 800 students? What is that, about 3.5 schools? Bentley is 2 schools. I'm not gonna read it all to you because we'll go through this step by step. But this just gives you an indication of, I thought you were closing it. Oh, I guess they're all running low. Okay, okay, I really better talk fast then. Okay, so what do we do about this, step by step? Let's start with the, oh, yeah. It really is low, it won't. Oh, okay, okay, there we go.
That computer will not control the phone.
Got it. So these are the attendance zones. This is our blank slate. What do we do about this projected growth? The first step, of course, is the opening of Phelan Elementary next fall. That's represented there in the center of the district, right here. The next step will be the orange schools. Hopefully, or needed, well, all of these are needed as soon as they can be opened. But the orange ones, Jordan Ranch, in order to relieve Lindsay, Terrell Elementary, which is in the Candela subdivision, and the Elementary 32 that's on Powerline Road. All of those need to be opened by fall of '23. And then those are followed by fall of '24. The location here on Beech Nut Road near Grand Parkway, and on the west side of Cross Creek Ranch in the Creek Rush section. I've grouped these together because these are the sites the district already owns, okay? Plus, all of these sites, with the exception of the Creek Rush site, you have funds, bond funds, to pay for these schools. So this is what I kind of consider the first step. This is what you're on track to do in the immediate future, notwithstanding all of the construction issues and all of those other challenges going on. But that's just through 2024. Beyond '24, we're still looking at all of these additional schools to be needed. I won't go through all of them because you can see to getting back to the point we were talking about with Thomas, in the south part of Thomas. So this is the Thomas attendance zone here. And so by about 2029, we might be carving off the southern part of Thomas. But right now, nobody lives there. I think maybe there's one student. So all of this is future, projected future attendance subdivisions. And so nowhere in this plan does the northern part of Thomas that was under consideration tonight get rezoned. Again. Okay, so all of these new schools, let's talk about them in the aggregate, kind of like we did earlier, in that in the far northwest, in the Fulshire area, that's 7 new schools in the next 10 years. In the central part, 4 new schools. And in the far south, deep south, anything basically south of 59 is 6 new schools. Now, if you think about everything north of the river, that's 11 new schools, and that also basically coincides with the Fulshire and Foster feeder attendance zones, right? So let's move on to everything north of the river. I just told you 11 new elementary schools in that area, and that's also Fulshire and Foster. Fulshire, by far, wins the overcrowded race, I suppose, because we are projecting almost 3,200 students to live in the Fulshire zone by fall of '23. That's in 18 months. Okay? And the year after that, 3,700 students. And the year after that, 4,100 students in Fulshire. And I mentioned this in comparison with, or in conjunction with Foster, because Foster's getting overcrowded too, nothing compared to Fulshire, but 2,500 students in 18 months, followed by 2,700 and then 2,800. So both Foster and Fulshire need relief from high school 7 and 8 as soon as possible in the north. And then Randall and George Ranch are both projected to reach about 2,500 in about 2028 or so. So then high school number 9 needs to be in the south later in this projection period. And there you go. I hope I didn't give you heartburn, but that's the fastest I can whip through it. You're welcome. And there's a lot of information, of course, in the binder, and we are in great communication with the administration, helping guide them through all of these steps and in making these decisions about school sites and so forth.
You did all these projections if we were going to vote on our new master principles, so you went with the new numbers, correct?
Yes. Yes. It doesn't make that much difference. Okay. When you're talking about 4,000 students in Fulshire in a few years, whether you're building those schools for 2,000 or 2,500, doesn't make
So we're not.
well, you're maybe delaying things by a year, maybe, but
It's inevitable.
but it is inevitable, and you're not talking about necessarily immediately adding on to the existing schools. You're talking about expanding the size of the future schools. So I'm telling you, high schools 7, 8, and 9 in this decade, and then eventually you'll build 10, but you won't have to build 11 because you've increased the size, right? That's what Kevin was talking about, 4 instead of 5.
Wow. Any questions?
Y'all are really smart, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Dr. Nivens? Oh.
Just give us the bad news and leave.
Yes.
Well, I have a statement rather than a question. When I first met Dr. Tapor and her team, I was very impressed as how well they know our data, just off the top of their heads. And so, you know, it's very evident that they've done a great job with Lamar, but they know all their district data like that. And so I really appreciate she and her team for their attention to detail for us. And so what I have asked them to do, and I created some heartburn, was to come more frequently, come by every quarter, and we'll work out how we can do that. And it may not be a full report every quarter, but maybe talk about some of the hot spots. I do know she said that it takes about 4 months for them to complete this entire study. And so, but every quarter we do need to stay on top of this as we continue to grow. You know, what was that, 20 new schools in 10 years? Schools. 20 new schools in 10 years? So yeah, we have to stay on top of it. But I just want to say to her and her team, I really appreciate the attention to detail and all the information that you give. And they always answer the phone, and they are there for us anytime we need them. And so I just want to say I appreciate it. And like Trustee Welch said, you guys are really smart.
Thank
Trustee
you very
Lambert,
much. And
yes.
I would like.
Trustee Lambert, sorry. I guess I'm tired too.
Trustee Welch was thinking the same thing, though, right?
You guys are really smart.
Thank you. I appreciate that you acknowledge that this is a team effort. You see Justin and me every year, but this really, we have a whole team behind us that put together that great report. And without all of that research, we wouldn't have it up here.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? Nope. Thank you.
Thank you.
We still have to go in closed session for a minute. About the employees. Yeah, I think we can. Okay, so we are going to go ahead and move on to, we're going to go ahead and go into closed session. It is now, I'm scared to look, 10 o'clock. We're adjourning to closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.071, 551.072, 551.074, and 551.082. The Open Meetings Act to discuss personnel, land acquisition, or consultation with our attorney. On.
There it is.
There it is. Oh, there it is. It is 10:14 p.m. We have a quorum with all members except for Ms. Brunzell. Are there any other motions to be made?
Do I need to wait for her? Okay. Madam President, I move that the board terminate the probationary contracts of Sherry Gross and Melissa Cornet for contract abandonment pursuant to Texas Education Code Section 21.104, and that the board find that neither Sherry Gross nor Melissa Cornet had good cause for abandoning their contracts.
All in favor,
Oh,
sorry, do I have a second? Mr. Lambert seconds. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Any other motions?
Madam President, I move that the board terminate the term contracts of Courtney Gallion and Timothy Bowman for contract abandonment pursuant to Texas Education Code Section 21.211, and that the board find that neither Courtney Gallion nor Timothy Bowman had good cause for abandoning their contracts.
Do I have a second? Mr. Witt seconds. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, motion carries. Are there any future agenda items that need to be pulled?
I would like to pull the discussion for instructional material recommendations for, let's see what page that's on. Future consent, so A1, page 145. I'd like to pull that.
Thank you. Anything else to be added to the future agenda? Okay, hearing none. We do have an upcoming meeting or event, I would say, Men Who Cook is coming up this weekend. That's going to be exciting. Anything else? Any events coming up? Okay.
I'll be
well-
cooking and I'll be winning that whole contest.
Uh-oh, we have a contestant over here.
Mr. Jacobson.
I'm eager to see what you're cooking.
It'll be good stuff. Okay, it is 10:17 PM. The meeting is adjourned.